Good afternoon, everyone. Phil Penarski here with CBS 42 Now. Hope you're all having a great start to your Monday. We are just a few moments away from hearing from the Birmingham City Schools as they give an update on the Alabama Comprehensive Assessment Program that was administered back in the spring to sort of gauge students' engagement and how they are comprehending certain subjects. It appears that the press conference is getting started, so we will send you there live now.
Results, they are available for you. Dr. Sullivan will also give some details about our plans moving forward. However, if you have additional questions at the end of this press briefing, you will have an opportunity to ask those questions directly. Again, thank you, members of the media, for joining us at this time. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ms. Stewart. And again, thank you, members of the media that are here on this Zoom call. Good afternoon. Today, the State Department of Education published the results from the spring administration of the Alabama Comprehensive Assessment Program, or the ACAP. This gives us a snapshot of the proficiency and student proficiency, and provides us with information that will help us develop plans to raise the student achievement of every student. This week, parents in Birmingham City Schools will receive individualized reports on their child's performance in last year's test, those students who are in grades 2 through 8. Additionally, our schools will provide information that will help parents understand this report, because this is the first year, as Mrs. Stewart indicated, that the ACAP has been administered. We today are going to discuss an overview of our district scores. I'm joined by our academic officer, Dr. Jermaine Dawson, as well as our Executive Director of Testing and Assessment, Dr. Keisha Chapman. They are here to respond to any questions or assist responding to any questions that the media has. First, let me provide you with a little background. The ACAP was developed by Alabama educators to measure the academic standards specified in the course of study. Previously, the state used a test called Scantron to assess student achievement in elementary and middle schools. Both the Scantron and the ACAP assess the same standards, but they use different prompts and different methods. Overall, the state of Alabama and Birmingham City Schools reveal learning loss for many, many students. This is not a surprise. We have been discussing the potential for learning loss that's been brought on by the worldwide pandemic for more than a year now. These data reflect what learning loss looks like. Although the data in Birmingham City Schools is not where we want it to be, it does show a strong potential for recovering unfinished learning. This past spring, as I indicated, was the first year for the ACAP. And on the ACAP, level 1 is considered as the lowest level for achievement. In comparison to previous years, mainly 2018 and 2019, the data shows a decrease in Birmingham in the number of students scoring a level 1 in English language arts. The percentage of students in level 2 showed an increase. That means that a larger percentage of students in Birmingham City Schools are closer to reaching level 3 or proficiency. The percentage of students in level 3 or proficient also increased from 2019 to 2021. However, there was a decrease in the number or the percentage of students who scored a level 4. That means that they exceed the standard. Now, I must say there was a significant decrease throughout our district in our math scores. 70% of the students who took the test last spring scored a level 1, and 26% scored a level 2. Only 4% of our students indicated, based on the last year's test, scored a level 3 or a level 4. In several grades, the scores show that our students struggle with math even before the COVID-19, and this continued throughout the pandemic. Despite whatever level of proficiency our students scored on, we are still proud of the efforts of our scholars. I just want to highlight one of our schools. Students at Oliver Elementary School exceeded the state average for the percentage of students scoring in the highest level in math. We know last year typically the state requires each school district, each school to have at least 90% participation. This participation measure was waived last year. So last year, the 2021 school year, the test was given face-to-face. Many of our parents did not feel comfortable with their students going into buildings for long periods of time, especially as the pandemic raged last spring. We, as a school district, reviewed our test scores over the last couple of weeks, and we have, as I mentioned earlier, we're not surprised by the results. In fact, we have been talking for the last year and a half about the potential for learning loss, and that is why we as a school district put the following steps in place to ensure that our students are ready for this coming school year. We have already started the initial framework for recovering learning loss associated with the pandemic. It started this summer. We had face-to-face instruction this summer, 5 days a week. We had nearly 1/5 of our total student population attending our Learning Strong programs this summer. In fact, we had 1,900 students who were in grades 1 through 3rd grade who would be participating in our lit camps, also who participated in our literature camps this summer. This school year, we started school a little bit early. And part of the reason why we started early was to ensure that our students had what we call intercession periods. And what this does is it takes 180 school day and expand that to nearly above 200 days. These intercessions are just one part of an overall goal to improve student achievement. We have hired reading coaches for all of our elementary and K-8 schools. In addition to that, we have hired school-based curriculum coaches. In the next couple of weeks, you'll hear about a plan where we're partnering with colleges and universities to have high-impact tutoring during the school day with college students. I know that many of our parents may have some questions about this test report and whether and how to read the information and how to ensure that their children are on track. Over the next couple of weeks, your child's school will be providing one-on-one instruction with our parents, as well as at faculty, at PTA meetings or in Title I meetings to explain what this test data means and how well their child's school performed on last spring's test. These are very challenging times, and in Birmingham City Schools, we are ready and prepared to meet the challenges. I have with us Dr. Dawson, as I indicated, and Dr. Chapman, and we'll open up the floor for any questions that you may have around our test scores and our plan moving forward. Ms. Stewart?
Yes, I know we have Randy Hildreth on, and we have Magdalene.
Hi, Dr. Sullivan. In regards to the data, I know that we're looking at a lot of this in preparation to understand how to implement the Literacy Act. So just talk about in the district level, processing this information and understanding that we will likely have full implementation of the Literacy Act, how you're feeling, what that's looking like for you all.
So I'll start the conversation and I'll have Dr. Dawson to chime in. We did not wait on the state to release this data to assess our students. In fact, last spring, we assessed our students using iReady, and we determined those students, particularly who were in 2nd grade and who would be going in 3rd grade this year and would fall under the Literacy Act, how many of those students were performing below grade level. We identified those students by name, and as part of our summer programs, we contacted those parents and we had camps called our literacy camps. And so those literacy camps were geared towards students who were in early elementary schools, grades 1, grade 2, grade 3. And we had nearly 1,900 students who participated in that. In addition to that, we've identified this year, based on our early assessment, where those students are in 3rd grade and what their reading level is. And so we have identified and putting into place individualized learning plans for all of those students to ensure that those students do not repeat the grade. I am just on a personal note disappointed a little bit that the governor did not sign the bill that came out of the Senate last year, because we recognize that our students for the last year and a half have been in a pandemic, and these students who were in the third grade when the pandemic started, they were in first grade. So they basically, in their first grade year was cut short because of the pandemic. Last year, well, with a lot of stops and starts as related to the pandemic, and then this year, those students are being held to a standard as if the pandemic didn't exist. But with that said, I'm gonna ask Dr. Dawson if you want to share or add anything to that.
Sure. Thank you so very much, Dr. Sullivan. Just to quickly add to that, we've been on a robust plan in the academics division to do all the things that Dr. Sullivan has stated, but also from the teacher lens is to ensure that our teachers are ready and trained under the Alabama Literacy Act. Many of our teachers have already gone through the state training with letters. We are also happy to report that we are becoming a letters trained site right here at Birmingham City Schools for all of our teachers who still will need that training. Additionally, there is the state has required a certain amount of resources that will support the Alabama Literacy Act. And in the district, we have chosen the SPIRE program. And we're happy to report that before the school year ended last year, all of our BCS teachers received that training, and that was part of what was implemented in the summer program. And we would like to say that if you look at the data, it clearly shows that this training was going well beyond just K through 3, but also we want to make sure all of our teachers can have this particular training. And we believe that also attributed to some of the changes also in the number of level 1 kids being moved into level 2. And we're continuing that robust plan in this new school year.
Can I ask another question?
Yes, ma'am.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Is there a place where we are able to see the data? I know that, each student will get their individual data later on, but is there like a breakdown of percentages? I know when the state released their, the preliminary data, it was like, X amount of students tested. This is how many, the percentage of level 1, percentage of level 2. Is there a place where we can get that data for Birmingham, like a breakdown?
Dr. Chapman, do you want to speak a little bit to how the data is being sent out and distributed?
Good afternoon, everyone. The data was at first distributed to our board members. We were waiting for the state release. Now that the state has released and Dr. Sullivan has addressed our stakeholders, the data will be made available on the district website under the Assessment, Accountability, and Research Department heading. And also the data is going to be shared with our communications department. So you may be seeing some information come from the communications department in addition to this as well.
Okay, is that like today, or we should look for that like later on this week?
Later on this afternoon.
Okay. And then one more question for me. I know that one of the things Dr. Mackey emphasized is we have to kind of take this data in context. And Dr. Sullivan, you mentioned this. We know that students were in and out of the classroom. I know that there's been a big push to have students in the classroom this year. I know BCS worked a lot virtually last year. If you could just kind of continue to put your data in context, considering specifically what your students experienced.
So last year, during the pandemic, we almost about 15 months ago began to share that there was significant slide as it relates to coronavirus. We saw it in our preliminary data. That is part of the reason why we were very aggressive about trying to keep schools open this year. We started vaccination clinics this summer for all of our students. And even before that, this spring, we did vaccinations for our teachers. We are looking at a 3-pronged approach now to try to ensure that our students stay in school. One prong is vaccinations. The next is education through our COVID conversations. And then the last prong is testing. So we're going to start next week. The week after the second week of October, doing testing for all of our students who choose to do COVID testing. And that'll be a weekly test. So we're doing that because we recognize that kids, students learn best in a classroom. And the only way we can keep students in the classroom is if we start mitigating the spread of this virus, particularly in our schools. And so all of the data that we began to look at last year told us that our scores were that this is what learning loss looks like. In fact, we were a little bit surprised last year as we looked at some of our benchmark data when we saw the reading scores. Although they were affected, they weren't affected as nearly as much as the math scores. We saw a significant decrease in the performance of our students in mathematics. I don't know if the virtual environment lend itself better to instruction around reading than it does math, but it does make sense because mathematics, typically you need manipulatives. Kids need to be able to see these complex concepts in real time, and oftentimes that may be difficult using a device. So, we knew that a significant number of our students, either because they were exposed to COVID or because of the virtual learning or blended learning, had gaps in instruction. And so this is what that looks like. The federal government has put billions of dollars in education to address learning loss. And the data is showing us clearly that learning loss is real and it is something that needs to be addressed. And I'll be honest with you, it won't be addressed in 1 year. This is going to take multiple years to address the type of learning loss that we're seeing as it relates to where we are with COVID, because we're not out of the woods yet. We still have situations where students may have to be quarantined for 10 days or 14 days because of COVID. Those are huge gaps in learning. Although those individuals may be connected via device, we know, as I said earlier, face-to-face instruction is the best instruction.
Magdala Lusant has questions from WVTM. Magdala?
Thank you. Dr. Sullivan, what I wanted to talk about, I know there was a decrease, you're saying, and even more decrease with the math results. How do you all fix that? I know you said you all are gonna be partnering with colleges and universities with tutoring sessions, but is math on the forefront when it comes to these tutoring sessions? How do we fix this?
Absolutely. It absolutely is. I think the biggest thing that we have to do is around tier 1 instruction. And so the way that, we initially, we have, like I said, a multiple pronged approach, but the first approach is keeping students in school. We also, those tutors that we mentioned, they're going to be working with math, they're going to be working with reading. We also have partnered with AMSTI and other groups to provide additional support. And then we're also, working with our teachers around making sure that the way we deliver math instruction is in a concrete manner in which students actually manipulate math problems and not necessarily just go through the process of solving the problems on pencil and paper. But Dr. Dawson, do you want to speak a little bit more directly around some of the actual interventions that we're putting in place around math?
Yes, Dr. Sullivan, I think you pretty much stated most of that framework, but just to add to that quickly, is that we have restructured how instruction looks in Birmingham City Schools. There are what we call instructional frameworks so that teachers are very clear and it is concise and systematic across the district as to the components of the instruction in a classroom from what we call bell to bell, so that we can do exactly as Dr. Sullivan has stated, that we can fix it in first instruction. Addition to that, we are providing a robust training. As you can see, as Dr. Sullivan has stated, that literacy is on the move. And last year, one of the reasons is because of the Alabama Literacy Act, there was an all-out, lack of a better term, assault on making sure that we close the gaps in that area. And the same level of intensity that we have for literacy, the math data is showing that we will have to do that as well. And so we have a robust plan to ensure that our teachers receive extensive training with understanding the mathematical shifts that have taken place to continue to build their content knowledge, so that when they're delivering that instruction to students, that the students will be able to understand easily. The next piece of that is that we've also put in together new frameworks around what we call professional learning communities. And in that framework, it really lays out what should happen in those communities as teachers are planning about the instruction and the types of thinking that needs to take place, especially when we talk about mathematics and all the shifts that Dr. Sullivan has just mentioned, the use of manipulatives, being able to put in word problems and to really be able to unpack that in a way so that it's systematically rolled out to students that they can be able to comprehend and to be able to master the standards. And all of this is coupled around our curriculum guides and then the unit assessments that we have put in place this year that are over periods of time along with our benchmarks to measure the impact of instruction so that when we see that the data is coming back where this school or these particular teachers are struggling, then the district team can be released to support those schools as they do on a daily basis, but specifically around what the needs are in that building, working with the school leadership and the coaches to be able to address those concerns and mitigate them as quickly as possible so the students can be successful.
I have another question. Dr. Sullivan, if you can just give us your pure reaction to these results. I mean, I know the district has struggled in the past before with trying to keep these students, you know, afloat. And then, of course, we hit the pandemic and it seems like things didn't get any better. As superintendent, how do you feel about these results and how do we move forward?
So I would say that, I won't say that I'm just disappointed by the results because I knew that in this pandemic that there would be significant issues around student achievement. That's just, we knew that was going to happen. I am optimistic because we have a team of people who are around the table who spend day and night focusing on how we can improve student achievement in Birmingham. You're right, even before the pandemic, there were significant issues around learning loss. But I think with the infusion of support from the federal government, us having the right people around the table to strategize and to put just really meaningful programs in place to support students. And I think that there's a element that we may not be talking about as much, but I think it is just as important as the reading and the writing and science. It is the social and emotional aspect of what learning is. We know that many of our students, because of the pandemic, have underlying issues around how they cope with what is going on around them. And I think that the support that we're having around our mental health, around our social emotional learning is kind of an undergird the support for what our students are doing in the classroom. I feel confident that our test scores moving forward will be much improved. I think one of the things that Dr. Dawson just indicated, that even throughout this pandemic, and Magdalena, I think this is important, the number of our students who scored a level 1 in reading decreased. That means that the number of students, the percentage of students who were in the lowest level in reading, that actually increased. Students moved from level 1 to level 2 during the pandemic. And so if our students can achieve, and it's not great, I'm gonna tell you, we still have far too many students in level 1, far too many students in level 2, but if we can see that kind of growth in the middle of a pandemic, I'm sure that we're gonna see that same kind of effort in math and moving our reading scores even further than where they are now.
Thank you.
Are there other questions?
I have a question, Cheryl. I see, Maggie, you say I have a box on my head. Is that still there?
Well, on my end, I'm watching you via Zoom, but my photographer who's recording off of, I believe, the live stream, there was a box there. I'm not sure it's been taken care of.
Is it like a paper box, or is it like a printer or something?
Oh, he told me it's gone now. It was on the Vimeo side. Okay. So Vimeo side, it's all right. It's gone now. You're good.
Gotcha. I don't want to walk around with a box on my head.
Right. We were looking out for you too. We got you.
All right.
Look, if there are no other questions, I'd like to thank you all again for joining us. Just so you'll know, we will be sending a letter out to parents today, and we will also send them a link to this press conference as well, so that they are fully aware of where we are and where we're going. So thank you all so much for including us in your day of news coverage.
And that was the Birmingham City Schools press conference where they announced some of the preliminary results regarding the Alabama Comprehensive Assessment Program that was administered back in the spring of 2021. It was used to gauge how students are handling learning and if they're comprehending certain subjects in school at this time. Again, it was very important for us to really hear from Birmingham City officials themselves. Of course, we heard from Superintendent Mark Sullivan as they sort of described what these numbers mean and some of the reasoning behind them and why the program was first initiated. Again, this is the first year that ACAP has been administered, and it came during, of course, trying to see the effects that the COVID-19 pandemic had on students. Some of the major points was that 70% of students in Birmingham City Schools scored at a level 1, which is the lowest level for math. 26% scored at a level 2, which is just one more higher. And then only 4% of all students in Birmingham City Schools scored at a level 3 or higher. And I believe Dr. Sullivan said that a level 3 is proficient in that certain subject. So, of course, those scores are just for the math portion of ACAP. He did say that standards and assessments did increase for language arts, which is a huge factor, of course, a very big deal due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Sullivan saying that, this is what learning loss looks like due to the COVID-19 pandemic. He said that students do learn best if they are in a classroom. So he did say that the pandemic and having to switch to remote learning did play into effect into some of these scores. We are going to have more information on this coming up in the CBS 42 News at 4 in just about an hour and a half. And we will also have all of the latest information for you over on our website, cbs42.com, in just a matter of moments. We want to thank you all for tuning into this latest edition of CBS 42 Now, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.